Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Negotiation Room. I'm Tim Cummings, and delighted to be joined not only by my co-host and our resident expert, Keld Jensen, but also another true expert, David Tollen. Many of you may have encountered David in the past at some of the World CC summits and events. Tremendous to have you back with us, David.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Tim.
And our topic today is the big question, really, is redlining a thing of the past?
From my point of view, what you can achieve with a red line is clarity. One side sends the other a draft contract and the other sends back a red line. Very often, when you do that, you take just about, I don't know, half of the issues that were in the red line and eliminate them because the party receiving the red line says, well, those are fine. And you focus in on what remains. Where I think people go wrong is that they look at the negotiation as simply exchanging drafts, and using modern technology, those drafts are redlined by a computer. What I generally tell my students in our trainings and in my classes is a red line should be followed by a conversation. Unless you're essentially at the end of the negotiation and all you're doing is trading back a few minor things, the response to a red line generally should not be another red line. The response to a red line should be a negotiation, should be a conversation, because otherwise, how do you know what the real reasons were behind the other side's, rejections of this or that
Mm.
clause and additions of others? So to me, redlining is a very powerful tool when it's couched in sessions of conversation.
Mm. Exactly, David. That's why you're here, because you're brilliant. Because I just love what you said, and I've never been arguing that redlining is a waste of time and we shouldn't include it in the process. What I'm just saying is it's not really a part of a negotiation process to me. And one of the reasons for that is quite often we have a commercial negotiation where you have commercial negotiators sitting there agreeing on content and delivery and upside and quality and pricing and what have you. And then they sign it off and are happy and leave the conference room. And then we go into what I call the siloed phase of the redlining, where you have legal professionals that start exchanging these most negotiated terms. And that's a problem. The other problem, and I love what you just said, David, is that I see way too many, I've been doing this for 30 years. I see way too many legal professionals that actually just exchange redlining with redlining without any conversation. So I love what you said, David. It has to be followed up by a verbal conversation. David, why is it that often I see the redlining process being so isolated from the commercial negotiation process? Why don't we merge the commercial negotiation with the redlining negotiation, if we call redlining negotiation, which I would actually discuss we shouldn't. But why is it it's so siloed quite often? Do you have an explanation for that?
Yeah, actually, I do have some thoughts on that. I actually would like to return at some point too to law school and on both my criticisms and defense of the institution. But more
Yes.
importantly, there's this issue that really is what I think you're both talking about, which is the divide between the quote commercial negotiation and the quote legal negotiation. One other thing I say in our trainings is there's actually no such thing as legal terms. Every clause in the contract has a business impact, or why are you negotiating it? If you
Mhm.
can't see the business reality behind the clause, it really doesn't belong in the contract. So,
Right.
but why do you have this bifurcated process? It's really a question of staffing. I think
Mm.
most lawyers in-house and a lot of lawyers in law firms and most contract managers would say, well, this process where there's the initial commercial negotiation, where the value is created, where the product is chosen, where the schedule is agreed upon, etc., should include the lawyer, should include the contract manager, and things would run better if it did. And I think that is invariably right. I think you get all the issues on the table at a productive time. But there's a staffing problem. In the end, the lawyer contract manager is an expensive person and a limited resource. And a lot of the initial commercial negotiations, as they're generating value, still might not go anywhere. It's a conversation between, a salesperson and a business person who's going to use that product. And the company that's buying and the company that's selling don't want to dedicate the resources. So what ends up happening is you get that very powerful value creating initial commercial conversation, and then you bring in the draft of the contract, and then you bring in the professionals who work with it, and those are the people I train, and I am, and so take what I say with a grain of salt. But what I often say is, when they bring you that commercial negotiation and you're the lawyer or contract manager, and they say that they've got a deal and they ask you, could you just write this up? Could you paper this? The problem is they don't actually have a deal. They have about 20% of a deal. Their
Right.
deal does not encompass things that are at issue in Tim and WCC's, top most hated issues, which is what happens if somebody sues the customer for IP infringement?
Right.
Or what happens if the system breaks down? And
Right.
the role of the sort of the second shift, attorneys,
Mm,
contract managers, et cetera, in bringing the deal to a close is getting agreement on those other 80%. And I
mm,
don't think even World CC's top 10 strike list can be done away with from the deal. I
mm,
think there's
mm,
a question to be asked about what is the best process of getting
mm,
those things agreed. But those
mm,
things are necessary components of the deal, which is why year
mm,
after year after year, World CC puts out this list and everybody agrees we spend too much time on these, and yet it doesn't change. And yet they're not
mm,
eliminated from the contracts because
mm,
no one feels we don't need them. And so we have to
mm.
find some way to reach agreement on them.
What is kind of funny though, I agree with everything you just said, David, but what is quite funny with the list from World CC is that the list have the most negotiated terms. That's one list. And then there is the most important terms. I think I'm right now, Tim, ain't I? And those two lists, funny enough, are very different. You would expect that the most negotiated terms would be identical to the most important terms, but they are actually quite opposite. It's like night and day, which, it's always fun for me to read.
Some other thoughts, if you don't mind my getting really technical about redlining, whether you're using an AI or not, make sure you do the redlining intelligently. For instance, I recommend never reviewing the other party's redline. Just don't look at it. Accept all the changes and run your own redline against your
Mm,
own last draft because it is
mm,
so common that somebody sends you a red line that's compared against the wrong prior draft and you miss
mm,
changes. And then I think the
mm,
final rule is again getting back towards the golden rule, which is maybe a better way to put it, you've just got to know what's at stake behind your issues. And if you're the junior person with limited authority or the senior person with great authority, either way, if you're saying we just have to have this warranty,
mm,
you're going to get your deals done faster if you
mm,
find out why we need that
mm,
warranty. If you find out
mm,
what is at stake, and it takes
mm,
extra time, and it's not as, I mean, positional negotiation, it's fast
mm,
unless the deal
mm,
doesn't get done. It takes time to do
mm,
that, but you've got to figure out why you need
mm.
the substance behind each clause in order to have a good chance of getting the best deal.
Absolutely, David. I love that. Again, curiosity, ask the question. So if somebody turns up and demand or request something, respond by a question. Why do you want it? What is the value? What is the cost if we don't do that? Have all those questions prepared. And perhaps even before you meet up for that negotiation, prepare the counterpart that you will be asking those questions and you will have the reply, the response yourself. So you can actually exchange and create that asymmetric value if it's possible. It's not possible in all variables. David, it's been a wonderful conversation. I haven't changed my mind. I still don't think redlining is negotiation. Is it an important part of creating a contract? Absolutely. I think it's a hackling process until we improve it, and perhaps technology can help us do that, or perhaps attorneys can be involved earlier. So I basically agree with everything we talked about.
If you found this video useful, please come check out Tech Contracts Academy. We provide training on drafting and negotiating contracts about artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and other forms of software. It's all for lawyers, contract managers, and any business people involved with contracts. So please come check out our programs live and on demand at techcontracts.com.